What is up, my friends? My name is Gerry Trevino, and today we're going to be going over my current live rig. I get asked quite a bit about the gear that I use for my live shows, so I thought I'd make an updated video on my rig since it's changed a lot from last year's. There is a lot to go over, so let's jump right into it and start with the guitars. Currently I'm using two guitars. First up is the main guitar that I use for most of my set. This is a Schecter Hellraiser C1 in gloss white. Normally this guitar comes stock with black chrome hardware, but I switched it out for gold hardware. The tuners are Grover locking tuners, and the bridge is a Tone Pros Tune-o-matic bridge. This guitar originally came stock with EMG pickups, but I switched them out for Fishman Influence modern humbuckers, also in gold. And this guitar has Ernie Ball Beefy Slinky 11 to 54 strings, and it's tuned to drop C. The other guitar I'm playing is a Schecter Omen 7 in this beautiful walnut satin finish. The only thing I changed to this guitar is the pickups. This has the Mark Holcomb Signature Seymour Duncan Alpha and Omega pickups in it. Other than that, this guitar is completely stock. I use Ernie Ball regular slinkies for the first 6 strings and a 62 gauge for the low 7th string. This guitar is tuned to drop A. Now, onto the meat and potatoes of the rig. For all of my amps and effects, I'm using the Line 6 Helix LT. I decided to make it a little more personable by getting this super cool decal from gearbyseba.com, and a couple of stickers of Sonic and Tails because I'm a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan. I'm routing the Helix in a number of different ways in order to feed my guitar signal to several different sources, including front of house, a power amp to feed my cab, and also in-ear monitors. I'm also playing along to backing tracks since I'm currently performing solo. So I'm also using my Helix as a mixer to feed the tracks and my guitar signal to my in-ears. I was super inspired by Richie Castellano's video on how he uses his Helix as a personal in-ear monitor system, so be sure to check out that video too. To fully explain how I achieved this, we're gonna have to jump into HXEdit to get a clearer picture of what's going on. Here's what a typical preset of mine looks like. This is for a song of mine called Emotep, and as you can see, as I start flipping through the different snapshots, it turns various amps and effects on and off. There are 4 different lanes to look at, and I'll refer to them as lanes 1, 2, 3, and 4 going from top to bottom. My guitar signal starts on lane 1 and jumps down to path 2A, which is this 3rd lane here. This is so I can take advantage of all of the Helix's DSP processing power. At the end of the lane, you can see that it's hitting the multi-output, which means that my guitar signal is going to be coming out of the XLR outs, 1/4 inch outs, and the headphone out, which is typically normal for most Helix presets. Now, in order to incorporate the backing tracks and all of the routing I mentioned earlier, we're going to utilize the sends and returns. I'm using an app on my phone called SoundQ to play all of the backing tracks. I like using this app because it comes with a lot of handy features. For one, it's very easy to just tap on one of the cues to start playing a track. If I need to start the track over because, let's say I goofed and I missed the count in, I just tap the same cue again and it starts the track over. You can even rename the cues and set different end actions for all of them. For example, let's say that these are all of the songs in your set list. Maybe for the first 3 songs, you want the cues to play one right after the other, and stop after the 3rd song because that's when you plan to talk to the audience. Well, you can tell each cue to either stop once it plays the track all the way through, or simply just play the next cue. This is a very cool app and I highly recommend it for those looking to play with tracks without using a laptop. Now, this is what one of my typical backing tracks sounds like. As you can hear, the click is panned to the left and the tracks are panned to the right. It's split up this way so I have the ability to hear the click and the tracks in my in-ears, but only give the tracks to front of house. So let's start hooking everything up so I can show you how I do this. I'm using an 1/8 inch TRS to dual 1/4 inch TS stereo breakout cable in order to connect everything. The 1/8 inch part goes into my phone. The left 1/4 inch part goes into return 1 of the Helix. This side is carrying the click. The right 1/4 inch end goes into a radial passive stereo DI box. This side is carrying the tracks. Then I take another cable and connect one end to the through of the DI box and connect the other end to return 2. This is how I'm able to send the backing tracks to both front of house and to the Helix. Jumping back into HXEdit, if you look at lanes 2 and 4, you can see that the inputs of those lanes are set to return 1 and 2. That's where the signal from my phone is going to come through. So if I start up one of the cues, you'll hear both the click and the tracks coming through. The only other thing I have on those lanes is a couple of volume blocks so I can control the level of the tracks. Those two are hitting the multi-outs, so if I plug my in-ears into the headphone jack, I'm hearing both my guitar signal and the tracks, and I'm able to control the overall output volume with the master volume knob. But Gerry, if you're sending everything to the multi-outputs, won't the sound guy just be hearing everything that you're hearing too? And yes, if I plug my Helix straight into the sound console via the XLR or the 1/4" outs, that's exactly what they would be hearing. But we're actually going to be utilizing the sends of the Helix to overcome this obstacle. If you look closely at lane 3, you'll see that I'm using a couple of sends. Send 1 is at the very end of my signal chain, so that the only thing coming out of send 1 would be my guitar signal. I'm plugging another 1/4" cable from send 1 into the other input of the DI box. Now, the left side of the DI box only has my guitar signal, and the right side has the tracks. And now the sound guy can easily hook this up to his sound console. This is where all of the routing stuff would end, and this would be perfectly fine to use if you plan on only going direct. But because I'm extra, I'm actually going to be using send 2 as well and feeding my guitar signal into a Seymour Duncan Power Stage 170 to power my Mesa 212 cabinet. If you look at lane 3 again, you can see that I have a send 2 block right before this impulse response. This is so I can send the guitar signal with no cab sim to the power amp and have the cab sim hit the PA system. I'm taking another 1/4" cable from send 2 and plugging that into the input of the power stage. From there, I'm plugging a 30-foot speaker cable from the output of the power stage to the input of my Mesa cab. Now I have a bit of stage volume and it won't sound so empty with just me playing up there. The last thing now would be to connect my guitar and my Shure 215s to the Helix. But prepare yourselves, here comes the really extra part. Normally, you can get away with plugging your guitar into the Helix with a regular guitar cable. I'm using the headphone output to listen to everything, so you would need some sort of headphone extender in order for the cable to be long enough to reach you, or I guess plugging it into some sort of wireless unit would work too, but I opted to stay away from those in an effort to keep this rig as condensed as possible. Now, with all that said, that means that you'll have 2 cables dangling around you, which can be really annoying to manage. So what I did was I made a hybrid Y cable of sorts. Basically, I took a guitar cable and a headphone extender and I loomed them together using this cool material from Alex TechFlex that I found on Amazon. It expands as you push it together and shrinks as you pull it apart. Think of it as like a Chinese finger trap. The first thing I did was replace one of the ends of my guitar cable with a right angle end. This is so it'll end up being more flush to my guitar once it's plugged in. Next, I taped the headphone extender to the guitar cable. I made sure to leave enough of a distance from the right angle end of the guitar cable to the input of the extender so that, when all is said and done, the headphone input would end up being right by my side. The TechFlex stuff only expands so far, so in order to fit both cables in there, I unfortunately had to cut off the other end of the extender. But that's okay because I replaced the other end of the extender with a nice Neutrik TRS end to match the guitar cable. After running the TechFlex down the whole cable, I put some heat shrink at both ends of the extender so that the TechFlex stays in place. So now, I'm left with a loomed cable that looks like this. No more trying to manage 2 cables. One end goes into the headphone out of the Helix, and the other goes into the guitar in. From here, I simply plug in my guitar and my in-ears, and I'm ready to go. There you go. That's pretty much my rig in a nutshell. The last thing to mention is that I very easily fit all this into a Helix backpack, as you can see here. Now I'll let you hear what it all sounds like. I'm going to let you hear what it sounds like going direct, what it sounds like going through the cab, and what it sounds like with the backing tracks and all. So that's my live guitar rig. If you guys have any further questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them as best as I can. For more guitar videos like this one, head over to my channel, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time.